Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Thank you for stopping by. I'd like to thank Jane Dutton for taking my thoughts yesterday about Africa and China and the global markets. I find myself very bearish, but you probably know that already. Let me take this opportunity to remind you that our MindSpeak sessions start with our first one this Friday from 5 o'clock in the afternoon at the Intercontinental Nairobi Mara Ballroom. We're hosting Kengen, their CEO Albert Muga, whose tag on Twitter is Albert Muga Muga, Muga Muga, which I quite like. My brother-in-law's Osman, reminds me of Osman, but I digress. We'll be hosting them from 5 to about 7 o'clock. We'll have a panel as well of key officers to discuss various issues. Great story to be told, and I wish it would transmit to the stock price, which is trading at a PE of less than 2, which is extraordinary. What is MindSpeak? Have a look at a little 6-minute clip we have up on the website and under rich wrap-ups. Macro thoughts. The Economist is asking, is China's leadership losing its grip on the economy? I'm going to answer that because I've been answering that question, as it were, a number of times last year. The song Showdown by ELO came to mind watching the markets today. Great song. If you haven't heard it, that is also linked on rich wrap-ups. John Cassidy, writing in the New Yorker, a very interesting piece. What is the post-Davos model of the world? He asks. The oil price is in free fall. China just announced its lowest GDP growth in a quarter of a century. He says the European Union has been in crisis for years. The Middle East, enough said. Even the American economy, one of the world's few bright spots, is showing some signs of slowing down. Why then are the markets so disturbed? One possible explanation has to do with trading algorithms, which encourage trend following and herding. Once stocks or bonds or oil prices make a sharp move, everyone piles in the same direction, and the market's overall shifts are exaggerated. At the moment, we seem to be on the cusp of such a shift, although even that is uncertain. It is conceivable that the optimists will be proved right, and that this is just a passing phase. If so, the post-Davos model will survive for another while. It is also conceivable that the pessimists will be proved right, in which case there are rough times ahead for the world economy, and someone will eventually have to construct a post-Davos model. The system will demand it. Capitalism can't run on pessimism, which is quite an interesting point. I wrote about this on the 18th of January, a start of the year that goes back decades. And I said, I, like Lefebvre, have watched the markets for eternity, and I've never seen anything like this. This is the quantum of the moves we're seeing, the violence of them. And that's saying something, because I can remember 1994, which was a pretty violent time. Mexico to Sobonos, for those who remember that. 1998, Thailand, Russia. And those were some big and seismic events. On the 11th of Jan, I wrote about how 2016 started with a bang. And I said, there is no Hail Mary pass coming for the commodity producers. And from Abuja to Luanda, from Lusaka to Johannesburg, the denouement is still ahead, and the risks of a disorderly breakdown are spiking, just like the Chicago Board of Exchange Volatility Index. Then I jumped to the Mellon Doctrine. This is Andrew Mellon, and time of the onset of the Great Depression, and he said to the President Herbert Hoover, liquidate labor, liquidate stocks, liquidate farmers, liquidate real estate. It will purge the rottenness out of the system. High costs of living and high living will come down. People will work harder, live a more moral life, values will be adjusted, and enterprising people will pick up from less competent people. The IMF put out their World Economic Update yesterday, seeing a weak pickup in global growth with risks pivoting to emerging markets. Pickup in global growth is weak and uneven across economies. Advanced economies will see a modest recovery. Emerging and developing economies face the new reality of slower growth. Projecting global growth of 3.4% this year and 3.6% in 2017. This coming year is going to be of great challenges, and policymakers should be thinking about short-term resilience and the ways they can bolster it, but also about the longer-term growth prospects. As the IMF Director of Research, most countries in sub-Saharan Africa will see a gradual pickup in growth, but only to rates that remain lower than those achieved during the past decade. Sharper than expected slowdown in China bring more international spillovers through trade, commodity prices and waning confidence. We're seeing that spillover really accelerate this year. Further appreciation of the dollar, tighter global financing conditions, we're already seeing that. Sudden bout of global risk aversion. You can say that's what 2016 so far has been all about. Escalation of ongoing geopolitical tensions in a number of regions. Whoa, that's another point. On the upside, recent decline in oil prices may provide a stronger boost to demand in oil importers. All in all, there is a lot of uncertainty out there, and I think that contributes to the volatility. I'll say that again. Well, let's go to home thoughts before we go back to the markets, which have been extraordinary, as I said. George Orwell, freedom is the freedom to say that 2 + 2 makes 4. If that is granted, all else follows. Interesting. Then I went back for some reason to T.S. Eliot, my favourite poem, The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock. And I'm not going to read it all, but just a few bits if you don't mind. Let us go, then you and I, when the evening is spread out against the sky. Like a patient etherized upon a table, let us go through certain half-deserted streets, the muttering retreats of restless nights, in one-night cheap hotels and sawdust restaurants with oyster shells, streets that follow like a tedious argument of insidious intent. Insidious, isn't it? Wonderful word. To lead you to an overwhelming question, and do not ask, what is it? Let us go and make our visit. And indeed there will be time, and now I'm jumping because I can't read poetry all day. Time for you and time for me, and time yet for 100 indecisions, and for 100 visions and revisions before the taking of a toast and tea. And indeed there will be time to wonder, do I dare and do I dare? Time to turn back and descend the stair. With a bald spot in the middle of my hair, they will say, how his hair is growing thin. I used to say that, and my mum used to get really upset. It used to hurt her feelings. I don't mind, when you're losing your hair at 20. My morning coat, my collar mounting firmly to the chin, my necktie rich and modest, but asserted by a simple pin. They will say, but how his arms and legs are thin. Do I dare disturb the universe? I have measured out my life with coffee spoons. I know the voices dying with a dying fall, beneath the music from a farther room. Arms that are braceleted and white and bare, but in the lamplight downed with light brown hair. That's a very great observation. It's an attractive thing, isn't it? Is it perfume from a dress that makes me so digress? Though I have seen my head grown slightly bald, brought in upon a platter, I am no prophet, and here's no great matter. I have seen the moment of my greatness flicker, and I have seen the eternal footman hold my coat and snicker, and in short, I was afraid. And would it have been worth it after all? Would it have been worthwhile, after the sunsets and the dooryards and the sprinkled streets, after the novels, after the teacups, after the skirts that trail along the floor, and this and so much more? That is not it at all. That is not what I meant at all. I grow old, I grow old. I shall wear the bottoms of my trousers rolled. Shall I part my hair behind? Do I dare to eat a peach? I shall wear white flannel trousers and walk upon the beach. I have heard the mermaids singing each to each. I do not think that they will sing to me. I have seen them riding seaward on the waves, combing the white hair of the waves blown back when the wind blows the water white and black. We have lingered in the chambers of the sea, by seagulls wreathed with seaweed red and brown, till human voices wake us and we drown. One of my favourite poems. My God, isn't that powerful? I'm 50 now, goodness. Political reflections. Kenyan Muslim who shielded Christians in Al-Shabaab attack dies. Salah Farah was on a bus travelling through Mandera in Kenya when it was attacked by Al-Shabaab in December. A bullet hit Mr. Farah, and almost a month on, he died in hospital in Nairobi. At the time, Mr. Farah told the BBC that attackers had offered him an escape. They told us, if you're Muslim, we are safe. There were some people who were not Muslims. They hid their heads, he said. However, and he said this to the nation, the people were told to separate, but they refused. We asked them to kill all of us or leave us alone. I concluded by saying, well, he very definitely has a ticket to ride to heaven. Hillary Clinton's odds of winning the US presidency is narrowed at William Hill. As the bookmaker said, it took a flurry of four-figure bets for her. I think she's a shoo-in, and it's for her to lose. And what was admirable, I don't know if you watched that Senate grilling she got, she didn't get up to go to the toilet once in 9 hours. When you're 50, that's a pretty impressive feat. And she's not even 50, she's older. So I'm all for her. Obviously, there are complexities. Benghazi, pretty gung-ho about regime change. Got to hold that in check. Exclusive, Pentagon may demote David Petraeus. Pentagon is considering retroactively demoting retired General David Petraeus after he admitted to giving classified information to his biographer and mistress while he was still in uniform. International markets, Holger, more bad news rolling in, adding to general Davos angst. Chinese stocks have resumed their downturn. 6th of July 2015, I said the stock market crash represents probably the biggest political risk to the neo-totalitarian, which was a phrase I borrowed from Quartz because it was so good, Xi Jinping. 7th of September, I said China must fix the economy. Despite the military show, put up a photograph of the president at that military show. On August 24th August, I said China roils the markets, and it's now roiling it some more. In August 2015, I said it's totally premature to speak of a crisis in China. This is a senior IMF official. And I said, in my experience, when policymakers make these kinds of pronouncements, it is exactly because there is a crisis. At the moment, none of us can read China, said the CEO of Glencore. I said, I can, and it's going to get a lot worse. I think it is, as we can see. And at that point, I said, the further problem is that no one believes the data. They believed it momentarily through yesterday. This moment, when the market stops suspending its disbelief, is seriously a dangerous one for policymakers. Currency markets, the euro has surged up to 109.62. Dollar index around the 98.90 level. Japanese yen, about which I'm extremely bullish, 116.25. Wow, oh, that's a big move. That's moved very dramatically just whilst I've been doing the podcast. Swissy, I think 10013, but that was a little while ago. The pound, 141.50. Touched 141.30. I think it's in big trouble, the pound. Aussie, let's have a look at what that is at. 0.6850. That's going down because that's an Australia's Chinese proxy. India rupee within 1.4% of a record low. South Korean won 12.88. Brazilian real 406.22. Egyptian pound 782.95. Of course, that's an artificial rate. South African rand, when I looked last, 16.822. But you know what I think about that? I think that's going to 20, if not higher. Sterling, have a look at this chart that I'm going to put up. And I don't think such a crazy call is parity anymore. Dollar yen, my target is 105, currently at 116.25. More global doom. Japanese stocks enter a bear market with topics down 21%. There's a big inverse correlation with the Nikkei topics and the yen. And therefore I think it's going to come even lower because I think the yen's going higher. Recovery from trade swoon may be low as doom indicator. Baltic dry index indicates There's no recovery being predicted by this index, which is a real worry. Gold, let's have a look where that's 1096, highest oil. That's obviously been bid out because of the geopolitical concerns and market concerns. 10th of August 2015, amongst many different articles about oil, I said the meltdown is coming. Have a look at this 1-year chart, crude oil, big trouble, going lower. The only way that this hemorrhage stops is by somebody or two people taking 5 million barrels off the table. Russia can do it, Saudi Arabia can do it. Until they do it, we're going lower. Emerging markets, interesting tweet from Holger again. Have a look at the currency moves since the World Economic Forum of 2015. Very, very dramatic. Let's move to Africa. The IMF has lowered its growth estimate for sub-Saharan Africa for this year by 0.3 percentage points to 4%. I think it's going to be lower still, because if you look at that, the makeup is the two big elephants in the room, Nigeria and South Africa. I think South Africa is going to be at 0, and I think the risks of a disorderly breakdown or disorderly markets in Nigeria is growing by the day because of the Naira. And I think both those economies are going to be at 0 through 2016, which is going to drag down everybody else. But you're seeing a major inflection point, right, away from these commodity producers who have exited the sweet spot, now are in a very difficult spot. And it's consumer countries like East Africa in particular where we should see some momentum. Burkina Faso attack. New footage shows gunmen outside hotel an hour after the assault began. Very poor response. Going back to the IMF's World Economic Update about Africa, they said most countries in sub-Saharan Africa will see a gradual pickup in growth, but with lower commodity prices, to rates that are lower than those seen over the past decade. Put that in your mind. This mainly reflects the continued adjustment to lower commodity prices and higher borrowing costs, which are weighing heavily on some of the region's largest economies. Angola, Nigeria and South Africa. Asked during a television interview on Saturday whether Bongo had been democratically elected, Prime Minister Manuel Valls, this is the PM of France, no, not as I understand it. It's causing a big diplomatic row. Bond pain in emerging markets nowhere worse than in Africa. Emerging market bonds may be experiencing the worst start to a year on record, but nowhere is the pain greater than in sub-Saharan Africa, the world's poorest continent. Accounts for half of the 20 worst performing dollar bonds issued by developing nations in 2016. African securities have fallen 5.4% this year, compared with the average 1.3% loss in emerging markets. Malaise means governments will find it more expensive to issue debt just when they most need financing to plug deficits that are widening amid a plunge in prices for commodities. The converse is happening in places like Kenya, of course. You're seeing particularly violent moves in African bonds because you have an investor base retrenching from frontier markets, and the underlying fundamentals of these countries are suffering. Average yields on sub-Saharan African Eurobonds have surged to 9.4%. Kenya is a buy at this sort of 9.5 to 10% level. At these levels, the markets are shut for Ghana, Zambia and Angola. Claudia Kalic. Zambia notes the biggest losers in Africa with the declines of more than 14%. Most among 61 developing nations tracked by Bloomberg after Venezuela. Overspending and falling copper prices helped push Zambia's budget deficit to 6.9% of GDP. The country's kwacha, listen to this, has weakened 42% over the past 12 months. Economic growth in sub-Saharan Africa probably slowed to 3.8% last year. It doesn't appear to be the right time. We would rather miss the turnaround in bond prices than try to pick the bottom. You remember my boss Mark de la Valican going to get smelly fingers trying to pick bottoms. Zuma shows no understanding of the market, says Mashaba. And that's what I was saying on the 14th of December when I said the markets are not interested in Zuma's explanations. They are seeing a South African president gone rogue. Let me put up a photograph of him. South Africa last year, the least rainfall since records began in 1904. Country's corn production declined 30%. Zambia's harvest is going to fall 30%. It's quite extraordinary. We got rains here in what is normally our very hot season. And Kenya, again, has hit a sweet spot in this El Nino business. We've had good rains. GDP in Africa's most industrialized nation will probably expand 0.7% this year, compared with a prediction in October of 1.3% IMF. I don't think so. I think it's going to be zero. South African all share down 6.05% year to date. Dollar rand, and I'm not sure because I haven't been able to check what it is at this moment, but I think we're going to see each other at 20. Egyptian pound, well that's an artificial market, 783. Egyptian EGX 30 down 12.97% this year. A circular was addressed to commercial lenders whom it said should immediately start charging 50 naira on every 1,000 naira deposit or electronic transfer conducted by consumers trying to make a move on picking up income elsewhere. Nigerian all share down a huge 21.6%. Year to date. The markets are the message. Ghana Stock Exchange Composite Index, well, it was up, but it's now down 0.23%, but not a bad outcome given what's going on elsewhere. Petraeus, who I follow, beautiful Burundi, give us a wave, a windy day for Burundi's boatmen out on the waters of Lake Tanganyika, and he always posts some very lovely photographs. I spoke about this before, but Tristan McConnell tweeted today, crashing prices and a bad deal with Khartoum means South Sudan now pays $24 to export oil worth $20. This is the very clever deal that Khartoum did. When the oil price was 100, they agreed a fixed rate for each barrel of oil. And of course, the oil price has subsequently collapsed. Kenya plans spending cuts to curb budget deficit. This was Henry Rotich in an interview with the Financial Times. He's talking about looking to cut up to 60 billion shillings from the government's budget for the financial year ending in June. Good message to be sending out there, and one that needs to be sent out. The next 18 months are crucial for Kenya Airways, said Buvi Gunze, who's the CEO of Kenya Airways. They've sent the CFO home, and I think that was all an issue around an insane crude oil hedging policy. Which has just got more and more ridiculous because they're paying effectively prices for oil which are probably twice what the market is currently. But I think, I was getting concerned that Buvi wasn't making a move because they say you have a very short window when you come in as an incoming CEO into such a scenario, but now he's clearly making his move. McKinsey in there, I think that's probably helpful as well. Kenya's shilling, the Teflon shilling, 102.41. Just think about that when you go and have a look at what's going on in the other FX markets. Nairobi all share down 3.44% year to date, again outperforming the rest of sub-Saharan Africa. NSE 20 down 5.09% so far this year. Once again, I'm grateful that you stopped by.